All right, so listen up. Behind me is an Alpina XB7, and today I'm going to review it by sharing its details, also letting you know how it differs from a regular BMW X7, what's good about it, what's not good about it, and just some things that you should be aware of. But before getting started, a thank you to Porsche of downtown LA for giving me access to this car. If you happen to be interested in anything in their inventory, I've left their information in the description below. You can also reach out to me directly using Instagram @DriveSteady, and I'll put you through to someone who can help. So let's get started with this Alpina XB7. All right, let's start it out with the exterior. And the first thing I'm gonna say is that this thing looks absolutely badass. I mean, the overall stance with the air suspension, and this is not even in its lowest setting, is so nice. It's just a really nice looking full-size SUV. Now let's get on with the exterior, and you'll notice that this is a pre-refreshed version of the XB7. This is what the refreshed version looks like, but me personally, I like this look a little bit better. I think it's cleaner and much more elegant looking. Now let's get on with what Alpina does to it. First, this lower portion of the front bumper right here is an add-on, and of course you can see the Alpina lettering here. I'm not really a big fan of this because I kind of like subtle styling, but I do understand that this is an Alpina thing and they've been doing it for years, so I can at least give them credit for keeping traditions. And while speaking of traditions, let's come around to the side. You'll see these 23-inch wheels. These are optional. The regular ones come with 21s. And these are the iconic, classic Alpina 20-spoke wheels. Really, really nice. And let's not forget the side skirts that Alpina adds for that extra sporty look. Next, coming around to the back end, very minor changes here. Starting out with the badges, of course, you have Alpina here and the model designation XB7. Otherwise, this is regular X7, except for coming down here, you'll notice that there are dual exit exhaust tips, and they're circular, very AMG looking, nicely tucked in to this little diffuser to give it that sporty look. But overall, from the front, from the back, from the side, I think this XB7 is a really nice looking SUV. All right, so now the interior of the XB7, and I do have some seat time in an X7 M50i, so this is a pretty familiar space to me. So I'll cover some of the differences, what Alpina is doing, and it's definitely much more subtle on the interior than it is on the exterior with the big wheels and the body kit, and I'll detail that here as I go through. Now, starting out with the overall size, this is a full-size SUV. I'm 5'11". I do not have the seat in its lowest position, and there's still a lot of headroom. Somebody 6'3", 6'4", I would imagine would fit in here just fine. The seat itself is immensely comfortable. The features: heated, cooled, and massaging. Additional bonuses for heating: the steering wheel is heated, your armrests are heated, so there is a very nice level of luxury and comfort built into this front driver's seat. The legroom is also very good, outward visibility is good, and the overall front cabin space has a really nice amount of size. Now, what about the rest of the size or the occupancy of the XB7? It's the same as what you get in an X7, and you can have 6 passengers like this example with the captain seats, or you can have a bench style seat in the second row, which gives you 7 passenger occupancy. Now, let's move to what Alpina is doing that's different in the X7, starting out with the steering wheel. So this steering wheel is covered in Lavalina leather, which is a different material compared to the rest of the interior. And the steering wheel itself seems like it's a little thicker than what I remember being in the X7 M50i. It's got blue stitching, green stitching at the bottom, and the additional cool thing is that they take out the paddle shifters for Alpina and they put buttons back there. Now, I'm not sure how true this point is, but I read online that if you wanted to, Alpina will put the paddle shifters, the BMW paddle shifters in there for you if you wanted to. Check me if you know the facts on that, but I just read that somewhere. I personally don't have an issue with these paddle shifters in any way, shape, or form. Now let's switch on to some of the technology very quickly. This is running the prior generation technology stack from BMW's iDrive. Both the software and the hardware differ from what is being put into new BMWs. The new ones have a big widescreen and an updated iDrive software. But me personally, I do like the prior generation, and it's not to say that it's perfect. In fact, the new one isn't perfect either, but I think overall, the new generation and this prior generation are still very good. So a difference here with the Alpina, it's a minor one and it's in the gauge cluster in terms of technology. And there are different font and a color scheme which are updated to match the Alpina colors. Then we'll move to the center section here and you'll notice some additional badging and Alpina lettering. There is a BMW Alpina XB7 badge right here on the cup holder cover. There's also Alpina written here on the iDrive controller where the crystals are. So that's pretty much it in terms of differences up front. Now let me take you to the back and just walk you through some of the X7 related items in this XB7. All right, so now the back seat of the XB7, and as a reminder, the back area here behind the front row passengers are completely identical to what you would get in an X7 in terms of options and things like that. And forgive me, earlier on I misspoke. I said that this is a 6-seater captain chair configuration. It's not, it's the one with the bench seats. Obviously you can see here, and this has 7 seats. So let me tell you about what's going on back here. I'm 5'11", I can fit back here just fine, plenty of leg room, plenty of headroom, and the overall size in here, I would say 3 adults can probably squeeze. 3 children obviously are not going to be an issue. Now some of the amenities is pretty rich back here. You have the ability to raise and lower the electronic shades here on this side. I even have the ability to raise the ones on the other side. I have electronic reclining and forward and backward seats, so plenty of adjustability here for anybody who wants to get comfortable. You can lounge. There's a little pillow behind my head, so it's a really comfortable seat. In terms of charging and climate control zones, I have 3 USB chargers, so there's 2 down here that I can share, a 12-volt outlet, and then there's also one right in front of me for conveniency. It's the same for the other side, and the seats are heated. There's a 3rd and 4th climate control. This car even has a 5th climate control system that's in the back seat, and I'll detail that here. I've never seen that in any other SUV. They really pay attention to these 3rd row passengers in the X7. So climate control zones, you can adjust it the way you like, and overall from a back seat passenger perspective, it's a really nice open and comfortable space in the 2nd row. Now let me go to the 3rd row and tell you what's going on over there. All right, so now I'm in the 3rd row, and let me tell you what's going on here. So the way you get in here, there's a little switch on the 2nd row seats. You push that and it moves the seat forward and raises it up. I would say coming in and out is relatively easy for somebody my size. It would be even easier for children. Now let's talk about the size. So I've moved the seat a little forward in the 2nd row, and I've got an inch or 2 of legroom. Plenty of size back here for me to sit comfortably. I can put my head up straight, and I can feel that my hair is slightly grazing the ceiling, but not uncomfortable by any stretch of the imagination. 2 adults my size are probably going to be able to fit back here, and the amenities are also very rich back here. There's a lot of consideration being given to the 3rd row passengers, and that's something you rarely ever see in a 3-row SUV. So I have independent charging ports, one on this side, one for this side passenger. I have a 5th climate control zone that allows me to configure the temperature just back here for the 3rd row. I have heated seats in the 3rd row, never ever seen in 3-row SUVs. And as I mentioned earlier, you have plenty of space, and you also have the ability to put child seats back here. It looks like there's anchors and top tethers in the back here, and you can just tether it down really nicely. So if you wanted to, you can put 2 children back here in car seats. So very nice back seat here, and that pretty much rounds it out for the interior. Now let me show you the trunk, and then we'll go for a drive. All right, so now let's talk trunk. The way you open it, you have the key with you. There's comfort access here. And this has a clamshell style tailgate. What that means is the top portion here opens separately, and so does this bottom portion here. So you'll notice that this is closed now. The way you open it, there's a button right here. You push that, and it will expose the entirety of the trunk. This is nice when you have things in the back and you want to keep them from falling out when you open the trunk. So that's a nice feature, and it's also nice to be able to sit on if you're going on a picnic or whatever the case may be. So let me close this up because I want to show you the cargo space. So when the third row is up, you have 13 cubic feet. I left my camera bag here for reference. This is one of the things that's somewhat of a shortcoming here. There isn't a lot of space. You can probably fit maybe two medium-size luggage pieces here, and that's only if you store them vertically. They're probably not going to fit in terms of width, but again, that's subjective and varies based off of everybody's luggage. Now, you do have the ability to fold down these third row seats, so let's fold them down here via this button here. So these will fold down the rear seats. And one thing I do have to ding the X7 and the Alpina XB7 for is that these seats kind of slowly fold down, and it's the same thing when you fold down the second row passenger seats. They're kind of slow in their operation, but when you fold down the third row, this expands to about 48, 49 cubic feet of space. Now, of course, you do also have the ability to fold down the second row here, and that's done via these two buttons. So let's do that. And you'll see here an example of it taking some time for this whole thing to fold down. Now, this is in real time. I'm not speeding it up. I'm not slowing it down. So you can see here it's taking about, I don't know, about 10 seconds for the whole thing to operate and drop down to the lowest position. Nonetheless, speed aside, there is an ample amount of storage space, 90 plus cubic feet of cargo room in the back of the XB7 when you have all three rows folded, well, second and third row folded down. Now, a couple nice things about folding these seats up and the overall back seats. So you'll notice that there are these two buttons here. This is for max occupancy and this is for max storage space. So if you push this and all of your seats are folded up, this one button will fold everything down. This button here, so in this example, this is max occupancy. So seats are all folded down, correct? So if I push this, at the touch of one button, everything will start raising up. I don't need to one by one individually raise each seat using each one of the toggle switches. So everything folds up automatically, and it's just a nice convenience feature, nicely thought out by BMW. Now, one last thing about the trunk here. This button here lowers the back end of the car for easy loading and unloading. This is done using the air suspension. So when I push this, the lower end of the car, let me see if I can get it here, is going to go down and allow you to have easier access into the trunk. So if you've got something heavy, if you've got something tall, bringing the back end of the car down allows you to load it a little bit easier than if it was in the highest position. So that's pretty much it in terms of cargo space and the back seat area here. Now let's take this thing on the road and see what it drives like. Alright, so inside the Alpina XB7, let me rattle off some specs before we take it out on the road. In terms of engine, so this has an additional power bump, 612 horsepower and 590 pounds-feet of torque from a 4.4 liter twin turbocharged V8. Now the refresh generation has a little bit more horsepower. I believe it's 630, but this is no slouch, obviously, at 612. Now, how does Alpina get the power? Bigger turbos, more cooling, and a stainless steel exhaust system. And this is routed through a 8-speed automatic transmission, and it's putting power down via a xDrive BMW all-wheel drive system. And this rockets this car from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat. At least that's what Alpina and BMW claims. So the suspension is also changed. This is riding on the adaptive shocks, which is not different than the X7, but what Alpina does, it gives it additional bracing, it gives it a limited slip differential and rear wheel steering, which is good for performance, stability, and dynamics, but it's also very good for daily drivability, considering that this is a big car. Rear wheel steering allows the car to shrink itself, making it more maneuverable in tighter spaces. As far as the brakes go, 15.7 inches in the rear, 15.5 inches in the front. I found it very weird that the rotors in the front are smaller than the ones in the back, but they are. Not that it makes a difference in this car. The brakes are really nice, as I'll demonstrate here in just a second, but let's go ahead and take this thing for a spin. Now, when you set off and when you sit in this car, it's got a really nice high driving position. You just look out over the road, and it's the way that is generally described as it's a command driving position. Much like you see in Range Rovers, full-size Range Rovers, you see that here in the XB7 as well. Now, driving modes. So this car has several of them. You've got Comfort, and in Comfort you have Standard Comfort and Comfort Plus, which I'll jump into here just a little bit later. And then you have Sport, which is Standard, Plus, and Individual. And Individual allows you to custom tailor certain things like the exhaust, the steering feedback, throttle response, etc. But I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to go in Sport and Plus, and that will lower the car in its lowest setting and sharpen everything. Throttle response, shifting, all of that stuff is in the most dynamic setting in Sport Plus. I'm going to go ahead and put it in manual shift mode. And let's give this XB7 a little run and see what it's got in terms of acceleration. So I'm rolling here at 17 miles an hour. Oh, pushes you into your seat. Oh my goodness. Oh man, 7-seater SUV. Man, this is so intense. So interesting how you've got big cars like this, big SUVs that can go this fast, push you into the back of your seat, and just literally blast off. The exhaust note is pretty engaging. You can sense that it is pumped in. It does have some pops and bangs on the downshift, and man, the torque down low to get you going in the lower rev range is really astonishing. Gobs and gobs of torque in the XB7 here, 590 pounds-feet, and it's good when you're driving fast. It's also good when you're driving slow in the city, merging onto a highway. I took it on before I started filming this, and it's wonderful. Merging onto the highway, no shortage of power, obviously, with the horsepower, but the torque in city driving is what really makes a big difference, and this thing has plenty of it, and it just pushes you into the back of your seat. And the brakes here are very good as well. Plenty of braking power, so more than adequate for the amount of power that this engine is generating. So braking to power ratio on point, no shortage there. And touching on the transmission here, the paddle shifters, or the lack of paddle shifters, that is, this person's really confused. So the lack of paddle shifters, Alpina puts these buttons on the back here, and I saw some reviews about them being difficult to use. I personally don't think they're difficult. The one advantage you have with the paddle shifters is they have a larger surface area, so you can put your fingers in any kind of position in its vicinity and it'll work. These buttons obviously have a shorter surface area, but the one thing I do like more about them than paddle shifters is the sound that they make. They're much more engaging, and it's kind of like this satisfying feeling, kind of like a gated manual shifter. I mean, by all means, this is not the same feeling, but it's kind of within the same realm of describing the experience aspect of it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put it back into comfort mode and tell you about the rest of this car. So, speed standpoint, very fast, feels all of the 4 seconds 0 to 60 time. As I mentioned, lots of torque down low, very, very usable. The nice thing about it is that it's not like some on-edge V8. It's very smooth, very nice to drive, even when you're going slow in the city, well, not just slow, just in a city setting, when you're going 35, 40, 45 miles an hour, it's a great motor and it's very, very smooth to drive in the city here. Now, as far as the other dynamics of this, the transmission, I told you it's great, shifts fast, and these buttons here for shifters are good as well. The suspension, let's be clear here, even though this is an Alpina product and Alpina is more known for sportiness, and it's not really a sporty feeling SUV in terms of dynamics and handling and things like that. This is more geared for eating miles and miles and gobs of miles on the highway. It's a cruiser, it's a GT luxury missile, is what it's best described, or what I can best describe it as. It's not something where you put it in Sport Plus, even in its lowest setting, it's not gonna like be a race car or something. Yes, it does become low and the steering does get nice and weighted, and it is the suspension does get stiff, and try to keep it balanced or flat, but you can't defy the physics. This is a 7-seater full-size SUV that weighs close to 6,000 pounds, and you're just not going to defy those physics. So is it just a slush box? No, it is definitely not a slush box. It is a really tight, hunkered down SUV in sport and Sport Plus settings, but it's not tailored to be a sporty SUV in terms of dynamics and handling. So it's definitely more comfort and daily driver oriented. The brake pedal is very interesting. Last week I drove a M235i and that had a very sensitive brake pedal, and this is the same thing. There's a lot of bite, like right at the top, and when I sat in this car, I found myself kind of doing this, getting used to the brake. So it's just something to keep in mind. There will be some learning curve. It's very short. You get used to it maybe after about 2 or 3 minutes of driving and using the brake, but something you'll notice when you jump in here. Now, let me transition this over into just daily drivability, comfort, because this is what most people are going to use this car for. The XB7, yes, it's Alpina, yes, it's got over 600 horsepower, but most people are going to use this on a daily basis. So this is a wonderful, wonderful SUV. It's comfortable, the seats are nice, the suspension in Comfort Plus is like magic. The air suspension literally soaks everything up. It is A+ in terms of ride comfort, daily drivability. I mean, the seats are heated and cooled and massaging. The additional cool thing, the steering wheel is also heated. The armrest, the arm pads on both sides are heated, so you get this really nice cocooned feeling in here. And the windows are dual pane, I believe, so it's very, very quiet, isolated place to sit. And even the exhaust, given that it's a V8 stainless steel exhaust, when you're in comfort mode, it's very quiet and contributes to that smooth V8 feeling that I was talking about a little bit earlier. Now, to wrap it up in terms of driving dynamics, just a few comparisons to a couple other SUVs that I've driven. The full-size Range Rover, the new one, which is also a 7-seater now, if you're cross-shopping that and you want ultimate comfort and luxury and just a lot softer than this, the Range Rover is where you want to be. This is, I'm not going to call it stiffer than a Range Rover because that wouldn't be the right term. It's just a little less comfortable or a little less soft than a full-size Range Rover. So that's pretty much it in terms of driving dynamics. Now let's wrap it up with a final thought. All right, so that's the Alpina XB7. Now on its own, this is a wonderful SUV and does a lot of things very nicely. It has a great philosophy. It takes what's good from Alpina, the brand, the heritage, the performance, and what's good from BMW and meshes it all together to create this wonderful package and a great SUV. Now the flip side of things, is it worth it? Because this XB7 compared to, let's call it its little brother or sister, the M60i or the M50i, is $40,000 more expensive. Now, I do understand the argument that this car has a lot of features baked in as standard that would be optional in the M60 or M50i, but still, a fully optioned version of those is still significantly less $30,000 less than the XB7. So is it worth it? The yes side of things would say, yes, of course it's worth it. It's an Alpina, it's unique, it looks badass, it's the biggest, fastest, and baddest baddest X7, and therefore, yes, it's absolutely worth it. Now, the flip side of things would say, what do I need the additional 80 to 90 to 100 horsepower for when the M60 or the M50 are equipped with the same engine and are no slouches at 500 plus horsepower and still have all of the BMW benefits that you would get in the XB7? So that's something that you should consider. Otherwise, this XB7 is a wonderful, wonderful SUV when looked at on its own. So if you happen to be interested in my X7 M50i video, I will link that here to my right. Otherwise, that's pretty much all I've got. If you have any questions about this car or the X7, please make sure you leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram. Another thank you to Porsche of downtown LA. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.